Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. You are joining the very first session of the Colorado Restaurant and Bar Show educational series. You're joining how to create a plan to survive the pandemic, no matter what happens. We're going to give it just a minute here to let our attendees join the Zoom space, and then we'll kick everything off with Sonia Riggs, President and CEO of the Colorado Restaurant Association. So let's just give it a minute, and then we'll get going. All right, Sonia.
Okay, thank you, Sally Ann. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. As Sally Ann said, my name is Sonia Riggs. I'm the President and CEO of the Colorado Restaurant Association. We appreciate you joining us for the first session of the 2020 Colorado Restaurant and Bar Show virtual edition. It's our virtual education series. We created this because we know that COVID-19 is really obviously the most challenging crisis the restaurant industry has encountered. And many of you are wondering, after a crushing shutdown and quite a difficult summer, how are you even going to get through the winter? So this series aims to help answer some of those questions and help you get some of that information that will hopefully provide some answers for you, or at least some assistance. In weekly sessions, we'll feature industry experts who will dig into operational best practices to give practical, implementable ideas that you can immediately apply to your own businesses. Today, we're digging into financial contingency planning and cost cutting. We are joined by Gourav Patel, the founder of Denver-based Provisions Hospitality Group, and Adam Schlegel, who's a partner at Chook and Snooze Restaurants. Gourav's company, Provisions, is an end-to-end hospitality and restaurant consultancy helping new and existing operations conceptualize, strategize, improve, develop, and grow with the goal of improving operational and financial performance through careful analysis and strategic decision-making. Adam's companies, he's been obviously a restaurateur for many years, and he also has his own consulting company right now focused on food, beverage, agriculture, and sustainability. Adam's experience spreads across multiple sectors and disciplines in entrepreneurship, management, and socially conscious business practices. Many of you, as I met, probably met him as founder of Snooze AM Eatery, where he now sits on the board of directors. If you have any questions, please make sure that you use your Q&A function at the bottom menu of your Zoom window. We will be posting the recording of this discussion in about 24 hours in the Colorado Restaurant and Bar Show educational series event app. Before we get started, please let me add that over the course of the next several weeks, we'll be covering a number of topics in this series, including cash flow, additional revenue streams, social media, takeout and delivery, lease negotiations, creative uses of space, and more. Join us for one session, all the sessions, or anything in between, whatever works for you. You can sign up for the series on Event Cadence and stay tuned for more details. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Gourav to get us started.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm going to share my screen and presentation with you all. Thank you so much, Sonia, and thank you to the CRA and everyone at the CRA, not only for all the work you guys have done so far, the advocacy, but also putting together this virtual educational series, as I'm sure hopefully it will help many operators and restaurateurs out there navigate through the challenges of COVID-19 and what's to come with fall and winter approaching. As Sonia said, my name is Gourav Patel. I'll give you a quick, just a quick introduction to my background. I've been in restaurant and hospitality for over a decade, within accounting and finance for about 13 years. Previous to starting Provisions earlier this year, I was Senior Vice President at Sage Hospitality Group and Sage Restaurant Group here in Denver. If you know of the brands Urban Farmer, Departure, Kachina, that's under the Sage portfolio. And previous to that, I spent 5 years in LA at Innovative Dining Group, overseeing Boa Steakhouse, Sushi Roku, and Katana. My professional background, I've been driven and tasked by my companies for improving profit, processes, and efficiencies without sacrificing guest or employee experience, quality of food and beverage, or risking the branding integrity and equity. I've overseen over 50 outlets throughout my career, opened over 20, and created over a dozen brands. Everything from independent cafes, coffee shops, to full service fine dining restaurants, independent locations, to larger boutique hotel and resort locations. One of the things for me, data is very important to me in decision making, especially at a time like this. But at the same time, I cannot stress that decisions cannot just be made on data or Excel spreadsheets. And I have a great ability of intertwining that type of data and that type of outlook with operations. Before we get into the thing, I just wanted to mention recently, since I started Provisions in the last 6 months, I think, they've had a number of national mentions, some of which are listed on this slide. So feel free to Google and read about what we're doing and how we can help. So as Sonia had mentioned, today we're going to be focusing on controlling finances. And my part of the presentation is going to cover 4 basic areas. I would say, items number 1 and 2 are a must-have today. If you're not doing them, please do them. And we're going to take you through how to properly address these issues. And I would say number 3, when we get to it, is a nice to have. And when I explain what the complete picture means, hopefully you'll get a good sense into what I'm talking about and how you can really take the tools that we're giving you here and the information we're giving you here and applying it to your business going forward. So as we move on, hold on 1 second. There we go. Hopefully you guys are seeing the next slide. As we move on to the presentation, statement of cash flows, that's very important in terms of what's going on right now. Give me 1 second, folks. I apologize. It looks like my PowerPoint for some reason is stuck. Hopefully you guys can see the screen. 1 second.
We can see you, but I can't see your PowerPoint.
Okay, 1 second. It's for some reason my PowerPoint decided to crash, so it's restarting right now. I apologize.
And then if it gets stuck, Gourav, I can pull it up and share my screen.
Okay.
I've got that PDF.
Yeah, for some reason it is stuck. 1 second here. Yes, Allie, I think you may need to pull it up. For some reason, it's just not launching anymore. I apologize, folks.
Yep, that's totally fine. So let me go ahead and pop in here. I've got it running as a PDF, so it'll look a little bit different.
Sure.
But we'll definitely be able to share the info. So Gourav, you may need to kind of help lead me through.
Sure.
But are you guys seeing this okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, apologies. I think we are here.
Yeah, so back to it, statement of cash flows. I mean, I guess what's a Zoom meeting these days without some technical difficulties? But what is a statement of cash flows? So it's important to know that in a typical financial reporting package, especially for restaurants, you're generally going to see 4 things. One is your P&L, profit and loss statement, a statement of cash flows, a balance sheet, and a statement of owner's equity. Depending on your role, you may see all of that information, you may not, but it's important, especially for those that are owners, that you do pay attention to the statement of cash flows. In summary, The statement outlines your cash position, how strong or weak of a cash position you have, meaning how well your business is generating cash to pay its debt obligations and fund operating expenses. So when you're ordering food, you're ordering liquor, your rent is due in 20 days, your taxes are due on the 10th of the month. We want to make sure that you have enough of a cash balance to pay off those bills, and you're generating enough to pay off future payables. One of the most common questions I get on my end is, you know, I have a positive NOI or a positive EBITDA on my P&L. Is that the same thing? And in short, it's not. A P&L essentially summarizes your revenue, your costs, your expenses in a specific period. And typically, most of you are probably generating P&Ls on a monthly basis. I know some accounting firms and full service companies that handle books, you may even get weekly P&Ls, which is great. But a P&L statement and a statement of cash flow are two different things. I would say today, given where we are with COVID, how important it is to preserve and maintain cash, it is probably the single most important tool for your business. I put a quote at the bottom, and this was by Tom Colicchio very early in the pandemic, and he said, "Cash flow is our lifeblood." We look at that more than any other metric. When we bring in revenue, we're using it to pay bills 30 to 45 days ago. And, you know, he's right. And this is how much, how important this document was very early in the COVID, let alone now, 6 months in. So, you know, on the next slide here, I'm going to take you through a brief formula of how to do a cash flow statement if you don't have one already. In its simplest form, you want to take your beginning cash balance from your bank, pick a day and time. You add the net cash from operating activities, net cash from investing activities, and net cash from financing activities, and that will produce a cash ending balance. Net cash from operating activities, essentially your NOI, you know, what you did in your monthly P&L. Was it a profit or loss? Net cash from investing activities, examples of that would be, you know, did you sell some type of equipment? Did you sell some furniture? Some things that are considered assets that don't typically show up on a P&L statement, but assets show up on a balance sheet. And so we want to see the cash, whether it's plus or minus from there. And then net cash from financing activities. Did you receive cash from, you know, PPP funds and hopefully a new round of PPP funds? Do you have loans to pay off on your business? Those are the types of things that go into that bucket. And when you combine all three, you get a good look at where your cash is and how far that cash is going to take you. You'll be surprised to know that, you know, by the time you think about 2 weeks from now, the things you have to pay for, taxes, et cetera, it can obviously put a big dent in that bank account. So it's very important to keep this updated. I would say to do this on a daily basis if you can. Have a dedicated resource, someone that is in charge of this, to really help you navigate through the data. Many of the accounting and financial reporting systems should have a capability, and I say should because it'll be a wide range. Some of them may add it in at no cost. Others, you may have to increase your subscription level. I think to generate the cash flow, you would most likely need to do your bank account reconciliation under the same platform. So you really need to evaluate, you know, what system you're using and the functionality of it. You know, call those reps, see what you can get out of them right now. All said and done, I think you may run into a couple challenges by doing the generic cash flow statement through those systems. One is the frequency. Again, I mentioned a little bit ago that daily right now is so important. And if you can't do daily, then do weekly. I think if you're looking at monthly cash flows, you're almost a little bit too late. You can be caught off guard. And you know, just given our world right now, everything we're doing and everything you guys are facing, I think the less surprises, the better when it comes to this topic. And so my point is that we need to get more of a through the windshield look rather than a rear view mirror look. And that basically leads me to step 2 on the next slide, which I would say is another must have of what we're doing right now. And that's a strong and accurate forecast for your business. In its basic form, take your guest count, multiply it by your average guest check. That gives you a forecast revenue. I would encourage everyone to be as specific and as detailed as you can possibly be, by meal period, day of the week, dine-in versus to-go. You may have a higher dinner average guest check than lunch, but at lunch you may have higher to-go business. All that stuff needs to be put in. And I think, in my experience, there are a lot of software out there that will help you forecast by looking at your historicals. The fact of the matter is we are in unprecedented times, and while historicals are important, they may not be the most accurate view moving forward. I think you as operators, you as owners know your business better than anyone in any software. So I would encourage to do it the old-fashioned way on Excel. And if you need help, that's what we're here for. The more detail you are with this, the better off you'll be. You'll identify where your assumptions are off. You will identify things that perhaps you didn't know about your business. And that way you can pinpoint specific issues and problems and you can address them. Being thorough and realistic is key. I would also err on the conservative side right now. And I think I think it's important to mention with a revenue forecast, that's only as good as your accuracy, number one, but also how far you're going with the forecast. So I would encourage you to add in your expenses, add in your labor, and other things that are going to deplete your cash within your forecast. So you know exactly what's coming up, when it's coming up. That will then make your cash flow statement even more meaningful. And I think one of the most important things we can do right now, you as leaders, as owners, operators, etc., is communicate. Communicate to your managers, communicate to your chefs, let them know where you think revenue is going to be. The last thing you want to do right now is overstaff, overpurchase. It becomes waste. It's essentially, you're essentially throwing money away. And I think everyone can agree at this point where we are, every penny counts. So I can't stress communication enough. After the forecast, which will be on here, the next slide, Sally Ann, is what I kind of labeled it as the complete picture. Combine that cash flow statement and combine that forecast. If you can imagine kind of the topics that I just covered in these previous few slides and what the cash flow statement and forecast will give you individually, think about what it will give you combined. Not only will you have a good look into what kind of business you're anticipating, but you're going to have hopefully a good look into what kind of cash it's going to bring in, and if that cash is going to be sufficient for you to continue the next month, the next few months, the labor that you want to bring in, etc. I would post your actuals every morning. Again, find a resource, whether it's internal or external. I would definitely post actuals every morning. And going back to the previous slide, communicate. Throw in your labor expense. Throw in the food order that's not due for 30 days. Your sales tax bill that's due at the beginning of all those things, rent, put those things in there. And what we can do, and I can help with this, is we can create formulas on this document that will highlight things of concern. If your cash balance falls below $10,000, for example, we can identify that and we can project where those expenses are. And that way you have an idea as a business leader of what kind of decisions you need to make in the next few weeks to mitigate those stresses to your business. And last point on this slide, as time goes on, make modifications. If you're not doing forecasting already, again, please start right away, but you will learn nuances within a week, whether it be, your COGS is different today than what you thought it was because you've optimized your menu. Obviously, delivery commissions are a big expense right now. And so, I like to, when I do these sheets, I like to set my formulas by category. And that's why in the previous slide, I mentioned to segregate your revenue intake as much as you possibly can, because I want to forecast delivered fees based on just your to-go sales, not all your sales. And I would hate to use a blanket 15% of revenue as a to-go assumption. I think right now, accuracy. And so, like I said earlier, the less surprises for you as business leaders, the better. And so the fourth and final step, and I've kind of broken this into a few different slides. Now it's kind of time, to roll up the sleeves. Again, a lot of you have already been doing this for some time, but if not, we need to start. Obviously, fall and winter in Colorado will bring some challenges with patio space and outdoor dining, and who knows where indoor occupancy will go. But now's the time to take that information and decide what you need to do, what decisions you need to make today to ensure your survivability through the fall and winter, and hopefully into the spring and a successful 2021. Know your break even, and Adam is going to be covering break even more in depth directly after the next few slides here. Get a sense of what revenue levels you need to produce to comfortably pay all your expenses. One of the exercises that I've done in the past is I've kind of gone through my GL and categorized things into need, nice to have. And you'll be surprised, when you're forced to make a decision like that and categorize how many more things are under the nice to have than the need. And then it's up to you as business leaders to decide if now is the right time to continue that service, whether now is the right time to pause that service. Low-hanging fruit can be identified. We all know as restaurateurs what to look out for. Not only your deliveries, you're getting the right amount of quantity that you've ordered, but drop ship items such as medical supplies and things like that. I think the CRA has sent out previous information on the Colorado utility sales tax deduction. If you don't know what that is, please Google or reach out and we'll send some information. But I know the CRA has lobbied for a deduction when it comes to utility sales tax regarding production of food and beverage. Reach out to your vendors and partners as well. Inquire about what kind of pricing breaks they can offer right now. It's important, as we know, to know that everyone that we're buying from is also feeling a pinch right now, but this is a long-term play. And so I think a lot of vendors, at least from my experience, has been that a lot of vendors are adaptable to your situation, and where they can help, they're helping. Look at things like your POS support. If you have a PR marketing agency, any type of regular service you may have, janitorial, hood cleaning. Again, those are things that need to get done, but it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone and see if there's any type of reprieve right now. And then I would also say to explore some procurement partnerships. When I talk about procurement, I'm talking about companies like Avendra or Foodbuy, and there's a number of out there that can help you potentially get onto a buying program where you may get 1 or 2 deliveries a week. You're part of a bigger purchasing group, and from my experience, it's helped drive down food cost of goods and supplies, dry goods and things like that. Sally Ann, I think the next slide. Some other areas of opportunity that I have down here, obviously rent is a big one, perhaps your largest fixed expense. From my experience and the clients that I'm working with, overwhelmingly, I've dealt with landlords that are very accommodating. Again, if you put yourself in the shoes of the landlord, yes, they have a mortgage to pay to the lender, but at the same time, losing you as a tenant is probably not a great outcome for them either. So I would encourage, if you haven't done so already, pick up the phone, try to negotiate some items. There's a difference between deferral and abatement. One is just postponing what your liabilities are to a future month. The other one is eliminating them. It's a very important thing to know. I've had some clients that have been able to align their base rent to the occupancy guidelines. So if we're at 50% indoor occupancy, their landlords have agreed to only charge them 50% base rent. Again, this may be beneficial to your business. It may not. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. So it's important to just kind of keep all these things in mind when you're evaluating what's the best solution for you. Maybe it is switching to a completely percentage rent structure. At that point, you know that, you don't have a fixed base expense, but let's say the percentage is 10% rent, you can build in that 10% rent into your break-even model that Adam's going to show you in a little bit, and then you'll know exactly what you need to do to pay those bills. I would also look into some of your existing operational systems. POS systems. I know there's a big range of systems, both from, call it, legacy systems and more of cloud-based systems that you see today. A lot of them have some built-in sales analytics functionality. There are also some good third-party providers that do that for, I think, a very reasonable cost. Some of them have the ability to do some further analysis, like menu engineering and inventory management. Hopefully, whether you're doing that through the system or manually, you are having insight into that information, because these are all aspects that help you save money into fall and winter and hopefully make it through on the other end. Labor management, gift card loyalty, all these things are incredibly important today. Now more than ever as well, obviously, hopefully you have, I know it's a catch-22, but hopefully you've been seeing an increase in to-go orders. Obviously, between the commissions and then just the costs between packaging, napkins, utensils, etc., it can add up. So look at that, see if there's opportunity there with your vendors. And then I would also perform analysis, especially if you are a high volume third-party delivery customer. I would perform an analysis around internal or external. I know it sounds crazy right now, but you'd be surprised. There are some amazing cloud-based software out there that are very cost-effective, I think, that take the guesswork of, what route should my delivery employees go? When should they leave the restaurant, etc. They automate that, give you a great picture of your orders, where the best route, the most efficient route. It's cost effective, but obviously you, on the other hand, have to consider other expenses, insurance for one, liability, things like that. So if you happen to be, someone that does have a high volume from a revenue standpoint, it may be something to look into. On the next slide, I have some information on guest intelligence. I touched on it a little bit at the very beginning, but I wanted to really hone in on this point as we wrap up the first half of this. Now more than ever, your customer spending habits are key to pivoting your business. I came across a great article. If you Google it, it's right there in the third bullet point. It was published by Michigan State University, and it's called Dining on Big Data. And I pulled a quote there, and it's from the Chief Analytics Officer from Fishbowl Marketing. Once you know that people who buy A also like item B, you're getting a lot of insight from the customer on not only a promotional standpoint, but also on a bundling standpoint. And that information can help you adjust your menus. And it's important, I think, as we live in a very mobile, tech heavy world, it's important to embrace what's out there and the learnings you can get from there. You'll be surprised. I've worked at a couple large in private independent restaurant groups, and after 4, 5, 6 years there, you think it all in terms of what your guest wants, what's the number one seller, all that stuff. And it's amazing when you get the data, you will always have a few big learnings. And I think those big learnings are very important right now as you continue to pivot. Previously in restaurants, right? I mean, everyone's done it. If things aren't working out on the menu, you tweak it, maybe you tweak the price, you change the protein, whatever it may be. you let it ride for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and see what the response is. That may be fine in a non-COVID era, but in a COVID era, every penny counts and every day counts. And so I would encourage you all to, if you don't already have something to look at your customer insights from an ordering perspective, what they're wanting, why are they coming and shopping at your brand to begin with. I would really look into that because I think you'll find some amazing things. And then finally, on the last slide, I wanted to just kind of end cap this with some of the things that we can help you. We were born from the idea that we want to help restaurants, especially in these trying times. I launched Provisions in March after being laid off at my previous company. And one of the reasons I launched Provisions was, one, I love this industry too much. I have a great deal of passion for this industry and wanted to keep the creative juices flowing. But at the same time, I know the impact that restaurants have, not only on the people that are working there, but the people that are dining there, the people that are servicing those restaurants, and the entire community as a whole. We know the things that we bring into the restaurant from a product standpoint have multiple tiers of impact to suppliers and farmers and ranchers, etc. And I wanted to do whatever I could to help minimize that in my small capabilities as much as possible. We work one-on-one with clients to create personalized solutions. I have a list of some of the things on there. And on the final slide, I've left my personal email and my personal cell phone, just in case anyone does have any questions or would like to get some more information, or you need some help to create this cash flow statement and forecast, or just a second set of eyes on this information. I'm happy to do so. So please don't hesitate reaching out. Thank you again for attending. Thank you again to the CRA for this opportunity and for launching this educational series in a time where I think a lot of folks need every resource and support they can get.
Gourav, we do actually have a question in the
Sure.
Q&A. I'd like to ask that really quick.
Sure.
This person's asking, which accounting software do you prefer, cloud, for ease of doing daily statements of cash flow?
That question, it really depends on your existing structure. I think it depends on the complexity or the simplicity of your business. Do you have retail? Do you not? I assume you're also doing to go. It also depends on your chart of accounts, and most importantly, what POS system you have. Some of the legacy systems have some trouble working with some of the cloud-based systems, so it really depends that. If you'd like, I'm happy to, if you can provide me through email or through text some information about your personal situation. I'm happy to give you a recommendation on that.
Great, thank you. So I think what we'll do is go ahead. Those are all the questions we have right now, folks. Just a reminder, please type any questions you have in the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom box here. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam right now to get started, and we'll continue answering questions for Adam, and then we can also, you're welcome to ask questions for both at the end. But with Adam, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sonia. The CRA, I echo Gourav's words. Appreciate you putting this together, and honestly, all the work that you guys have been doing for our industry during these unprecedented times. It's really been inspiring and certainly very helpful. So, and it's not going to end. So we're going to pat you on the back and hopefully keep on going on your way. Let me go ahead and, who can share this? Advanced options. Is this going to let me even start to share? Let's see if we can do it.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right.
We can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to follow up Gourav. He's much more impressive and he's got a much more cleaner presentation than mine does. But I'll try to tie in a few components to it. I did just want to hit on a few things that Gourav said. I thought so many of them were so pointed and great. the cash flow statement is something that we take a lot of need to, both when I was at Snooze and certainly at Chook. I do a weekly reconciliation. Right now, I do it in Excel. That's always been kind of first and foremost for us to do it. And I've always also kept this kind of floor cash balance within each one of our restaurants in good times and bad, because things do pop up, because checks get cashed much later than you possibly remembered, or there are hiccups along the way. So we've always tried to maintain these like $20,000 or $30,000 cash balances within each one of our restaurants, just because sometimes you don't catch everything. Talking real quick about restaurants in the time of COVID, and specifically over these next, I'm going to say 9 months is what I think may be still this doldrums, and it's obviously anyone's guess. I think there's certainly some hope that come June of next year, we might be seeing somewhat of a normality, at least in the amount of open seats that we can have. But no matter what, we've always had difficulties in winter. I mean, winter has always been a trying time. November has its lulls, certainly after the holidays, and the January and the February timeframes. Indeed, that's like the Denver Restaurant Weeks. Those were how those ideas were born, is how do we get folks back into that. And I even know the folks that visit Denver are actively thinking about ways that we can maybe incentivize and start to bring up some of those packages now, to really drive home what it is that we can do. So this is just like an accelerated time of woe. So first part, I think, is again kind of reiterating what Gourav said, and it's knowing your current state of play. And I say that with, knowing your cash balance. It is like, how are your sales coming? What percentage of them come in your shop? What percentage of them are your patios? Again, knowing that to the greater degrees that Gourav mentioned is paramount to do it. I would say, in particular, you really need to understand how important these patios have been. You can probably do the pretty quick delta, because we used to not be able to serve any food as takeaway. And then it got pulled back a little bit, and suddenly we can actually serve a few things. But I think the big question is, are we really going to have active diner base on our patios come this winter time? Some people are going to get creative, tents, heaters, a number of those other aspects, but I think it's really difficult to bank on a lot of those sales right now. And so I think you really have to, when you're doing this like know my state assessment, start to understand that and even start to forecast what life looks like without those. And what does life look like at a 50% occupancy in-house? And then similarly, what are you doing on a takeaway basis? And what are you doing on a delivery basis? And that's the best way for you to currently know like what your state is. And I say that knowing that, the next part about talking about the break-even analysis is this being very realistic. You're not, this is not you starting off your new restaurant and telling investors pie in the sky how great it's going to be. This is you really looking in the mirror and really looking at these past few months and really understanding what you think the capacity is. And I think for a lot of this, that could mean losing money over the next 3 to 6 to 9 months. And knowing those things in advance, knowing those things now, you can start to take the most proactive steps. So whether it is cost-cutting measures, sales initiatives, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit more here, or even starting to shore up your cash position. It's better to do any of those things now than in an emergency when money is always more expensive. And again, I think you look at those things of raising cash if need be, through the lens and spectrum of debt, which I'm pretty averse to taking on new debt, period, but certainly during this time when the outcome is fairly unknown, but certainly could be a good time to re-engage those conversations with investors. If you have any, to let them know. Similar to the conversation that A landlord doesn't want to have an empty space, is an investor doesn't want to have an empty investment. And if you do feel good and optimistic about how your business was performing and that the future someday will get bright again, sometimes giving away more equity in a company just to ensure that you've got a tomorrow can be the right play. Again, a lot of these are just based on your projections and your grit and where it goes. So break-even analysis, super sexy title. This is, I think, very important. And again, talking about what these next 6 to 9 months are going to lead to, because you really need to streamline it and figure out what are the opportunities. And again, if the reality is I could be losing $500, $1,000 or more, or I could be at break even, it's going to dramatically impact what levers you pull when it comes to cost and or sales. So real quick, Finance 101 break-even analysis is this. Your break-even is you take your fixed costs and you're going to divide it by 1 minus your variable costs. So that 1 minus your variable cost is your profit margin. Getting into these things a little bit deeper. And again, if I'm looking at this, I take my entire P&L and I will go through each one and say, which one will I pay, whether the lights are on today or whether the lights are not on, and which one are going to be based on the costs or based on sales. So my fixed costs, bigger pieces are things like managerial salaries. Hold on 1 second. I lost it. Rent, and Gourav mentioned that as far as could you move rent into a variable cost. And we've actually done that pretty successfully with most of the places where we are at. I've always been a really big fan of percentage rent. I think it kind of creates or makes your landlord your partner, and your success is their success. I think 6% is a very good win. I think 7% is kind of fair, and I think 8% or above is starting to get a little unfair to you. Loans are another one, not necessarily on your P&L, but certainly on your cash flow that you'll see, trash, utilities, those kind of things. So variable costs are more based on what dollars are coming in and what you need to do to produce it. So cost of goods sold, your food, your drink is the majority there. If you're 20, 30, 35%, knowing that. The hourly labor that's required to produce those things, you've got things like merchant fees. Again, trying to go through your whole P&L and trying to decide what I'm going to pay if I turned off the lights for the next 9 months and just moved to Mexico and sucked it up versus all the other components. That's kind of going to view those fixed costs numbers. And, you have to, again, run those scenarios and say, what if I stayed shut, covered my fixed costs? What do you spend each month? We'll take a different variable cost scenario, which just says that, my variable cost is 50%. Say my cost of goods sold is 30% and hourly labor is 20%. And then you've got all those other components. Let's say it's at 50%. So if I'm going to do that math, I've got $5,000 in fixed costs divided by 1 minus my variable costs. I made it very easy in my math, and it's 50%. So 5,000 divided by 50% means 10,000. So $10,000 a month I have to have come in this door, given the current ways, to break even. If I sell $9,000, I don't lose $1,000. I lose $500 in those settings. One area I put in here when I said variable labor and hourly is that I think we've all found that managers and everyone are being much more active when it comes to the service of guests, simply because there is that strong need. Certainly there are legalities to it that you should always check, and certainly double check on anything I say. But knowing, or even sometimes taking the necessary steps of moving salaried managers to hourly roles and hourly rates, it's a discussion that no one wants to have. And yet this is your business. This is the livelihood. This is their livelihood on the line. And I do think that there is a real need for transparency with team and with everyone to understand that we're in trenches and we're really about to get dug in here over the next 6 to 9 months, and we all want to come out of this right. And so in order for us to actually do that, there is going to be sacrifice that's required, likely from all sides of it. So quick note on the variable costs and the managers. But again, there are legal structures on what a manager and manager cannot do. So always consult that free legal advice that CRA offers. Let's talk about some sales ideas. I'd say, sales is kind of what we have to do at all points in time. And so I'd say many of these levers are needed regardless of the pandemic. But some maybe that you felt uncomfortable with will suddenly have to become a little bit more comfortable. Not saying or endorsing that needing to do all of these. Maybe you don't need to do any or one, but they are all options to consider, just depending on where you're at. First sales group is the one, again, that actually you should be doing all the time, and that is just to focus on repeat guests, because they are always the cornerstone of any of our businesses. It's been stated that most repeat guests make up 80 to 90% of every business. So I often think about that when it comes into things like advertising and paying for new guests. How much money would I pay for the PR agency or the ad versus spending that money on the people that have already taken the opportunity to come into my restaurant? How can we actually boost up what it is that they buy, that they really create this like home? I think more than ever, you really need to have these repeat guests feel this like ownership and enjoyment and love out of what it is that you do, if we're really going to enable taking that to that next level. I do think we should be communicating more than ever with these guests. Newsletters go in and out of fad all the time, but I would say that fad is here, and it should be. And the ones that are able to tell stories about themselves and their restaurants and their identities, I think are a lot more connectivity than simply sending a newsletter with the latest promo, gadget, whatnot. Obviously, social media, gotta love it, gotta do it. And identifying guests and things as they come in, and knowing that. Again, it's that latter part is something I think we always should be preaching to our teams is, do you know who's in here, and do you know who's actually paying for your livelihood and all of the bills and everything that we're doing here? How do we reinforce and double down on service? And then another component too is rewarding guests, and certainly repeat guests, whether it's a beer or a dessert or just any sort of up. Paul Nashak with Mountain Sun Brewery used to always tell me, it's just like successful businesses give a lot of things away. I think it's best to identify from a cost perspective what makes the most sense to do. That's also a bit of a signature. So at Snooze, we actually have each one of our servers, and we tell them to give away 3 pancakes every day. And so if we have 7 servers, we're giving away 21 pancakes every day, whether it's a new guest, a birthday, a celebration, or the sorts. But it is, I think, those small little touches on signature items that really help make things more special. Delivery services, I mean, again, a lot of these things I'm saying, I think we've all had discussions or beat our heads on for a long while. If you're currently in the black and you are not on a delivery service, I salute you. It is tough, I think, at this point in time not to do that. If you're not and you're wondering, at Chook, I've fought tooth and nail forever to never bring those in until about March 15th. And they do boost sales. There is no question. And when you get into this notion, and it's their ploy, and I hate when they say it, but if I've got people standing around, it's better to give them 80 cents on a dollar because my variable cost maybe is only 40 or 50% than to simply have no sales. So there is a little bit of truth to what it is that they claim and say. And again, I think most places have seen that it actually is a boost on sales. Hopefully many of you have seen, I think, again, the CRA, Eat Denver, so many people have done a great job, but there is likely a cap that is coming up on the amount that delivery services can charge, and at 15%. I've done many analysis within our own restaurants on doing internal delivery versus external delivery, and honestly, like the 10 or 15% range was really where a lot of times I saw it as about a break even at cost. And so I do think, knock on wood, that this legislation gets passed, and at least in the city of Denver, it's a huge win, and hopefully one that can continue to ripple across our state.
Adam, can I just throw in there real quick? We have a couple of other cities that may be open to doing that as well. We've started to get some interest. We're reaching out to other cities to see where else that may work.
That's great.
So more to come on that.
A huge win for everyone. So we use Toast, and I actually really enjoy Toast and think that they've done a good job. I know that they're recently rolling out a new service. So if you use them, I would hit them up, where our guests actually stay inside our internal website. They order for delivery, and then Toast dispatches it directly to DoorDash. And it's actually done at a flat fee instead of a percentage of sales. I think it's $7 is what the flat fee is, but I just got quoted on it, but don't quote me on it. And which I'm also able to pass on some or none of that onto the guests. So if it's a $10 delivery, not a good deal. If it's a $40 delivery, ends up being actually a much more beneficial means to do it. And then again, on this legislation piece, if it does indeed come through, and there is this wide cap, we signed up for DoorDash as an exclusive to get it down to a rate that's not lower than 15%. But if suddenly the cap is at 15%, it certainly could be worth exploring more of these options, because certainly users go to Grubhub and or DoorDash, not necessarily always the same users. Discounted meals, call it the enemy of the independent restaurant, because it's like a coupon, and we charge a fair price for everything that we do. However, desperate times, and just like delivery sales, these are sales nonetheless. And I think you can start to get creative with some of these areas. So maybe depending on your location or area, if there are apartment complexes that are near you, if there are occupied office buildings, hospitals, a segment of workers, whether it's first responders or others, are there ways that you can promote a discount of 10% or 15% or 20% that still allows you to get beyond your variable costs? It still brings some money into the door while also continuing to boost your sales. So I do think that figuring out how you can kind of expand it a little bit may be a necessary lever during these times. Equally, collaborating with nonprofits and schools. I think this is something that most of us do in the restaurant industry, and certainly something I think we all should, but doing a school donation night for local schools is a great way, and we've seen it certainly at Chook that parents and everyone really wants to support our teachers and so desperately figure out how the whole education system can work. And offering some of those opportunities throughout is just this great win-win for your community. Obviously, one question that everybody has with discounts or meals is what happens when you want to stop doing this? Will you ever get back, or have you created this new expectation of that your food should actually be discounted? So one, I think, kind of taker area with that is this concept of like a COVID menu, or more like a kind of winter of odd that we're coming through. When's the last time you really redid your menu? When's the last time you really looked at it? You looked at your product mix and what's moving, what's efficient, what sells well, what's necessary and what's not. Similarly, if you are in the takeout business or thinking about it or diving into it, what are the products and opportunities that you can sell? Can you essentially rebrand or recreate your restaurant with a more tailored menu to who you are and what you could be during this 6 to 9 months of lowly COVID that we're going to. And if you have that, a separate menu for that, it very well may be easier to replace that menu with who you really want it to be come, April, May, June, when perhaps some of this has started to subside. The last one, not for everyone, and I will say, it's bullet point 2, but it should be bullet point 1. Recommend you consult a lawyer. Again, talk with the CRA, and they've got a number of great resources. But service charges are obviously becoming more prevalent in our industry, and that is essentially eliminating a tip line, not necessarily using a tip credit, and simply putting a service charge 10%, 15%, 18%, 20% directly on there. Service charges are taxed, so you certainly need to take that into account, but a service charge does allow you to distribute funds more based on how you see fit as a business. So you can certainly give some of these funds to staff. You can actually start to set maybe more consistent pay grades, while perhaps actually recouping some of these funds that will help you pay for things like managers, like bills, like rent, like a lot of the other components. Catering companies obviously have been doing this for years, where a catering company will charge a service charge instead of a tip line. I know as a catering server, I was going to go in there and make $20 an hour. Didn't really think twice about the fact that I should have been making $45 an hour, and that the owners were able to use those additional funds to help, again, fund the side of the business. And I think that there's also just outside of COVID and a pandemic, there is opportunities there to more equally disperse wages across this front and back of house divide that has riddled our industry for far too long. So that is some quick and dirty ideas and opportunities as we see it. I'm going to stop sharing. And if there's questions or answers or thoughts, happy to.
We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A, but I just want to add really quick to I really appreciate you reminding people that when they are looking at doing service charges to make sure that they're doing them legally. That is one of the biggest questions we get through our Legal Resource Center. And if you're not aware of it, you can reach out to us at info@corestaurant.org and ask your question, and we will pair you up with our attorney. They will answer basic questions like that at no cost, but we get a lot of restaurants that are doing it wrong. And I'm saying that because I want to make sure that you're doing it legally, and I would hate for you to get caught if you're in a really difficult situation. If you're even little nuances, we've had that people are mostly doing it right, but then there's one thing that they're doing wrong, and it's just so tricky. And we try to put up as much information as we can there, but I would encourage you to reach out for our Legal Resource Center, and they'll answer those basic questions for free. So a couple of questions, Adam. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe to that too, my plug in this education series is, I think, a service charge focused group or question like this, where you have a restaurateur and the legal on hand. Yes, everybody's instances are different, but there are a lot of similarities, and,
Yeah.
and I think that Q&A will be widely watched, certainly by me.
Sure.
Many others should be.
That's a pretty easy one for us to put together. Thank you for the suggestion. So I know you were talking, you were talking quite a bit about, or a little bit about discounted meals, and forgive me if you covered this one, but it says, do you think it's better to use discounted meals for existing repeat customers or use that to acquire new customers?
I mean, I think it's hard to delineate, but I think if you've got existing and repeat guests that are coming in, that are probably aware because they're alive today of what restaurants are going to, I prefer to really celebrate the people that have been coming to my restaurant, because I do think it has the ripple effect of one positive guest goes out and tells 7 more. So if I'm going to focus on that celebration, I'd almost use the 80-20 rule. and really try to focus more 80% on these repeat guests and 20 on the new and acquisition side.
Thank you. Another person, or this same person actually, what do you think, Adam, this is for you, what do you think about investing in mailing print newsletters to your customer list, assuming you have home addresses?
I mean, I think it's a personal touch, which is great. And I think if you've got the means to really do it well, then there's a great opportunity. And I'm always surprised and beaten down when I go around my neighborhood where Chook is so close and see friends and they have no idea that our restaurant exists. And so I would almost be more inclined to do a newsletter around like zip codes and trying to identify there, as opposed to maybe mailing out to customers that you have their areas. But it's a really wonderful touch, and a touch that we haven't seen very much anymore because everybody just assumes that email is all we get. There's just a lot of mail coming through your mailbox right now, and a lot of it is actually disposed of because you know exactly what it's asking for. So I'd just be careful.
Great. One person says, we also use Toast. Which features would you say are the best to utilize through Toast regarding all of what has been discussed today?
Their newsletter is actually really good. So we don't use like the Survey, WebMonkey, or any of those newsletter sources. Toast actually has one that's built in, and the beauty of it is actually all guests that order online through your system, it actually captures that. So it's a very quick and clean way to build up a pretty robust email database. We do send an email out to every one of our guests right away that's just like, hey, thanks, by the way, you signed up for this. Unsubscribe right away, because nobody likes to subscribe to things that they didn't. But that's actually a really good system. And then that delivery system that they do is very impressive. And Toast is actually always working on doing some better analytics on a sales side. And I do know that they have a lot of ways of actually helping you forecast weeks in advance. I think we, and Gourav probably agrees, as financiers, look backwards too much, but the most important thing is to actually really start to forecast what's going to happen. So using Toast to identify what does a Monday look like, what does a Monday look like 4 weeks ago, and what did it look like 4 weeks ago this time of year, but not like last month, this coming month, what's going to happen.
Thank you. We just have two more questions here. What are your thoughts for responding to minimum wage increase during COVID and the impact on financial health of food establishments? I'm thinking that's probably for me. I will say that right now, we just heard from Aurora that Aurora is now not going to pursue their minimum wage. Councilwoman Coombs is not going to pursue her minimum wage increase for this year. This just happened yesterday, based on, I think, a lot of feedback, I'm guessing, from restaurants and many other businesses that were coming out saying it was not the right time. My understanding is at this point, Denver is still. No other cities that we've spoken to are even thinking about it at this time. We're trying to keep our eyes and ears out about it. So if somebody hears something different than that, let me know. But at this point, we're not sure if there's an opportunity there with Denver. It's not looking good. We've certainly broached that subject with a number of council people, because what we're hearing as an association and what we're trying to do is realizing that any additional costs that any of you have right now are going to be adding an additional burden to you. So feel free to reach out to us at info@corestaurant.org if you have heard anything different, and we will get on it right away. But we're really trying to keep our eyes and ears open around the state. I don't know if any of you want to add anything to that.
You're in charge.
Agreed.
And then last, one person asks here, for calculating what % of your sales is your rent, so are you adjusting base rent or base rent plus triple net?
I can take that one. I think that depends on whether you have a gross lease or a triple net lease. If you do have a gross lease, then it's just one number. So that number divided by your sales is your percentage of occupancy. If you have a triple net, you'll obviously have your share of property taxes, CAMs, other expenses that may be part of that. I would add all of those. And so you'll have rent and all those lines, and then you have a grand total, label it total occupancy expense. And that grand total you should divide by your sales to get a percentage.
And I would just add, maybe when negotiating percentage of rent, that we've been doing it as an entirety. So add what you get and add CAM, and that's the base percent. Don't do like 6% base rent plus I'll play CAM. Just like, no, I'm paying 6% for everything. That's what I got.
Yeah, keep it simple, especially right now. Just keep it simple. I totally agree with that.
Okay, well then with that, I don't see any other questions here. I do want to thank both of our speakers today, Adam and Gourav. Thank you so much for your time. I believe we're going to be posting both of your presentations on our event app. Is that your understanding, Adam and Gourav? Okay, so for folks, if you want to access these, we will be posting those on our event app. Please look out for our other educational programs throughout the session here. And if you have any other great ideas too that would be really helpful, we're happy to put those kinds of presentations as well. We want to be as helpful as possible. So thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to talking to you at the next seminar. And thanks again, Adam and Gourav.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.